Silence is not emptiness. Silence is power. In the first few seconds of quiet, something uncomfortable often appears. Your phone feels heavier. Your thoughts get louder. The world seems to ask, why aren't you responding? But Zen teaches something radical. The moment you stop reacting, you begin reclaiming your life. We live in an age of endless noise. Notifications, opinions, expectations, comparisons. Everyone wants your attention, your reaction, your explanation. And slowly, without noticing, your energy is pulled outward until you feel tired, scattered, and disconnected from yourself. Zen Buddhism offers a different way. It says silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of clarity. When you step back from the noise, even briefly, you begin to hear something deeper than words. You hear your own inner direction. Think of a lake after a storm. When the wind is strong, the surface is chaotic. You cannot see the bottom. But when the wind stops, the water does not try to become clear. It becomes clear naturally. Your mind works the same way. Silence is the moment you stop stirring the water. Focus is the moment you stop throwing stones into it. Focusing on yourself does not mean rejecting the world. It means returning to the only place where real change begins. Not by fixing others, not by winning arguments, but by stabilizing the space within you that no one else can control. In Zen, inner peace is not something you chase. It emerges when you stop running. When you focus inward, chaos outside loses its grip. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to act from clarity instead of pressure. And slowly, almost quietly, life starts to feel less like a battle and more like a flow. This is not withdrawal. It is alignment. In silence, you are not disappearing. You are gathering yourself back together. And from that centered place, peace is no longer fragile. It becomes steady, unshaken, quietly powerful. And now, we will move into the first part of today's video. Why turning inward allows life to realign naturally. There is a quiet truth most people never stop long enough to notice. When you place your energy back into yourself, life does not collapse. It begins to organize itself. At first, this feels almost unbelievable. We are taught that control comes from managing the outside, fixing situations, changing people, reacting quickly, staying alert. But Zen teachings suggest the opposite. They remind us that disorder outside often reflects unrest within. When the inner world calms, the outer world follows. Think of a room filled with spinning fans. Papers fly everywhere. The noise is overwhelming. You could try to chase each paper, grabbing one after another, exhausting yourself. Or you could simply turn off the fans. The chaos ends on its own. Focusing on yourself is turning off the fan. When attention stops scattering outward, something remarkable happens. The mind settles. Emotions soften. Decisions become simpler. Life begins to feel less like a constant emergency and more like a rhythm you can move with. This is not escape. This is mastery. Zen never teaches us to abandon the world. It teaches us to stop being dragged by it. When you focus inward, you are no longer at the mercy of every opinion, every expectation, every emotional wave around you. You begin to stand at the center instead of being pulled to the edges. There is a principle in both Buddhism and modern psychology. Energy follows attention. Whatever you repeatedly focus on grows stronger. If your attention lives in worry, worry multiplies. If it stays in resentment, resentment deepens. But when attention returns to your breath, your body, your discipline, your awareness, clarity begins to grow. Imagine sunlight passing through a magnifying glass. When scattered, it warms nothing. When focused, it becomes powerful enough to create fire. Your life energy works the same way. Focus concentrates it. Distraction dissolves it. This is why chaos begins to lose its grip when you turn inward. You stop feeding it. You stop rehearsing it in your mind. You stop reacting to every disturbance. And without fuel, chaos weakens. Many people fear focusing on themselves because they confuse it with selfishness. But Zen sees it differently. Self-focus is not indulgence. It is responsibility. It is recognizing that the only part of life you can truly cultivate is your inner state. And when that state changes, your actions change. Your choices change. Your relationships change. Notice how often life feels overwhelming, not because there is too much happening, but because your attention is everywhere at once. When you bring it home to this moment, to this body, to this intention, the pressure eases. Outer problems do not always disappear immediately, but your relationship with them changes. You face them with steadiness instead of panic, with clarity instead of confusion. And this shift alone causes life to reorganize itself around you. Zen teaches that water becomes clear not by force, but by stillness. In the same way, life finds order not when you push harder, but when you center deeper. So as we move forward, remember this. Focusing on yourself is not stepping away from life. It is stepping into the only place where life can truly be shaped from within. When you stop scattering your attention outward and begin returning to yourself, something subtle but powerful happens. Life does not become smaller. You become steadier within it. And from this steadiness, we naturally arrive at the next part of today's video. Self-focus is not selfish, it is the art of inner mastery. Many people carry a quiet fear around focusing on themselves. They worry it means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. True transformation never begins by controlling the world. It begins by understanding the mind that experiences the world. Every thought you repeat, every habit you reinforce, every intention you carry, these are not small things. They are forces. Over time, they shape your perception, your behavior, and ultimately, your reality. You do not live in the world as it is. You live in the world as your mind interprets it. Zen teaches that if the mind is restless, life feels restless. If the mind is divided, life feels unstable. This is why looking outward for balance never truly works. So many people exhaust themselves trying to be everything for everyone. They chase approval. They manage impressions. They adjust themselves to fit expectations that keep changing. Slowly, their energy leaks away. Not because they are weak, but because their attention is no longer rooted anywhere. When energy is scattered, balance is lost. This is not a moral failure. It is a natural consequence of divided focus. Imagine trying to water 10 gardens at once with a single bucket. Every garden remains dry. But when you choose one and water it fully, growth begins. Turning inward is choosing one garden. Self-focus in Zen is not indulgence. It is discipline. It is the practice of watching your thoughts before they become beliefs, of noticing habits before they become identity, of aligning intention before action takes form. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. When attention is pulled outward constantly, the nervous system stays in a state of alert. Stress becomes normal. Anxiety feels familiar. But when attention returns inward through awareness, breath, presence, the system recalibrates. Clarity replaces tension. This clarity is not dramatic. It is quiet, and yet it changes everything. When you stop measuring yourself through the reactions of others, something loosens inside. You no longer need constant confirmation to feel stable. You begin to trust your inner signals. Your values become clearer. Your decisions become cleaner. Zen monks speak little not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand the cost of unnecessary expression. Each word spends energy. Each explanation gives power away. By turning inward, they preserve strength. This does not mean isolating yourself from people. It means no longer abandoning yourself for them. As energy returns inward, the mind sharpens. You notice patterns you once ignored. Emotional triggers lose their grip. Old habits surface not to shame you, but to be seen clearly. This is self-mastery beginning to take root. And from this rooted place, compassion grows naturally. Not forced, not performative, but stable. Because when you are no longer fighting yourself, you stop projecting that conflict outward. Buddhism teaches that peace is not created by pleasing the world. It is sustained by knowing yourself. So as we move forward, remember this truth. Focusing on yourself is not turning away from life. It is learning how to stand within it balanced, aware, and whole. As the mind gradually learns to return inward, something unexpected happens. The struggle with the outside world begins to lose its urgency. And in that quiet shift, we naturally move forward. We will move into the next part of the content, titled, When the Water Settles. Silence is the gateway to inner truth. In Buddhist teachings, the mind is often compared to water. When it is stirred, shaken, or constantly disturbed, it becomes cloudy. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see clearly. But when the water is left undisturbed, it settles on its own. The mud sinks. Clarity returns not because you forced it, but because you stopped interfering. The mind works the same way. Most people believe clarity comes from effort. More thinking, more analyzing, more reacting. But Zen reveals a different truth. The more you stir the mind, the less you understand it. The harder you fight confusion, the deeper you sink into it. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. When you stop feeding every thought, when you stop engaging every emotion, When you stop answering every inner noise, the mind begins to rest. And in that rest, what is essential reveals itself naturally. This is why silence has always been central to meditation. Not because silence is sacred in itself, but because it allows what is false to settle and what is true to surface. Think of a glass of muddy water. If you shake it repeatedly, it will never clear. But if you place it down and walk away, clarity returns without effort. Zen teaches that wisdom is not manufactured. It is uncovered. So many people exhaust themselves fighting the world, defending, proving, resisting, reacting. They believe peace will come once the outside changes. But Buddhism gently turns the gaze inward. The true source of disturbance is not the world, but the constant movement of the mind reacting to it. When you stop battling the outside, you begin to understand the root within. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means choosing clarity over conflict. In stillness, you begin to notice how much energy was being spent unconsciously. Old fears soften. Reactive patterns slow down. Thoughts lose their authority. You realize that not every thought deserves attention, and not every emotion requires action. Silence teaches discernment. As the mind settles, you see things as they are, not as fear paints them, not as desire distorts them. You recognize which struggles are real, and which were created by habitual thinking. This is not suppression. It is understanding. Zen masters say, do not try to calm the mind. Understand it, and calmness follows. When the water is still, the moon reflects clearly. This inner clarity changes how you move through life. You speak less but more honestly. You act less but more accurately. You stop reacting immediately and start responding wisely. Silence becomes a teacher, not something to escape from. And perhaps most importantly, silence reconnects you with something deeper than thought awareness itself. A presence that is steady, observing, and untouched by passing mental storms. This is where true freedom begins. Not in controlling the mind, but in no longer being controlled by it. As we continue forward, remember this image. You do not need to clear the water. You only need to stop stirring it. As the mind settles and clarity begins to emerge, silence no longer feels empty or passive. It starts to reveal a deeper strength, and from this place, we move into the next part of the content, titled, The Quiet Power That Changes Everything. In Buddhist wisdom, silence is never a sign of weakness. It is a form of intelligence. To remain silent when the ego wants to react requires awareness. To pause when emotions demand expression requires mastery. Silence is not avoidance, it is restraint guided by clarity. Most conflicts in life do not arise from truth, but from impulse. A careless word, a rushed reaction, a moment where emotion speaks louder than understanding. Buddhism teaches that many battles are unnecessary, they drain energy without bringing resolution. Silence creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space, wisdom appears. When you choose silence, you step out of pointless conflict. You stop feeding arguments that only exist to satisfy pride. You no longer try to correct everyone, explain yourself endlessly, or defend your worth. Zen reminds us, not every situation requires your voice. There is a quiet dignity in choosing not to engage. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that words are not always the most powerful tool. Action carries more weight than speech. A calm presence disarms tension more effectively than debate. Consistent behavior builds trust more than promises. Inner stability speaks louder than explanations ever could. This is why silence transforms energy. When you stop reacting, energy no longer leaks through emotional outbursts. It gathers, refines. It becomes creative force. Instead of wasting energy on drama, comparison, or defense, that energy turns inward, fueling growth, insight, and purposeful action. You begin to respond intentionally rather than impulsively. Silence is not stagnation. It is redirection. People who cultivate inner silence are difficult to manipulate. They do not react easily to provocation. They are not pulled into emotional chaos. They observe before engaging, feel before deciding, and act from clarity rather than pressure. Drama needs participation to survive. Silence withdraws consent. This does not mean becoming cold or detached from life. It means choosing where your energy flows. When you are no longer constantly explaining yourself, you gain time. When you stop reacting to every trigger, you gain peace. When you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you begin to understand yourself. Zen teaches that true strength is subtle. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. Like a mountain, it remains still, yet nothing can move it. Silence gives you sovereignty over your inner world. And when you govern your inner world, the outer world loses its power to disturb you. In this way, silence is not an escape from life. It is a way of meeting life without losing yourself. And as silence deepens, transformation follows quietly, steadily, and unmistakably. As silence becomes a stable presence within you, something subtle begins to change. Life no longer feels like a struggle that must be controlled. And from this quiet understanding, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, When Stillness Allows Life to Align Naturally. When you focus deeply on your own growth, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing what does not belong to you. You no longer run after validation, approval, or outcomes that drain your spirit. You begin to recognize what resonates with your path and what quietly pulls you away from it. This is not loss. It is clarity. Buddhist wisdom teaches that imbalance often comes not from lack, but from misdirection. We suffer not because life withholds, but because we reach outward while ignoring what needs care within. When attention returns to personal development, to your character, discipline, awareness, and inner stability, life begins to reorganize itself without force. This is where balance is born. Think of a seed buried in the soil. The seed does not chase the rain. It does not demand sunlight. It does not compare itself to other seeds or rush its timing. It simply does one thing well: it grows inwardly, faithfully, according to its nature. And because it honors its inner process, everything it needs arrives naturally. The rain falls, the soil nourishes, the sun appears. Alignment happens not because the seed controls the world, but because it remains true to itself. This is how silence and focus work together in your life. When your focus becomes clear and your silence becomes steady, synchronization begins. People, opportunities, and circumstances start appearing at the right time, not because you chased them, but because you became ready for them. You stop forcing connections. You stop rushing outcomes. You stop knocking on doors that were never meant to open. Instead, you notice something profound. Life meets you at the level of your inner development. When your inner world is scattered, life feels chaotic. When your inner world is centered, life responds with coherence. Silence plays a crucial role here. Silence prevents you from acting out of fear. It keeps you from grasping prematurely. It allows patience to replace urgency. With silence, you learn to wait without anxiety. With focus, you learn to act without hesitation. This balance between stillness and movement is where harmony lives. Zen teaches that natural order does not require force. The river does not push against the land, it flows. The tree does not rush to grow, it rises. The seasons do not argue, they arrive. When you stop interfering with your own process, life aligns effortlessly. You begin to trust timing. You trust that what is meant for you does not need to be chased. You trust that what belongs to you will not pass you by. And so, life becomes lighter. Not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to begin with. Stillness teaches discernment. Focus teaches direction. Together they create balance. This is the quiet miracle of alignment. Nothing dramatic changes on the surface, yet everything feels different within. You are no longer fighting life. You are moving with it. And in this cooperation with life, balance is not something you seek. It is something that naturally unfolds. As life begins to move in harmony and balance feels more natural, a deeper truth quietly reveals itself. Alignment is sustained not by constant action, but by restraint. When you stop scattering your energy, you start protecting it. And from this realization, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, The Discipline of Silence. Holding power without words. Silence is not something that happens by chance. It requires discipline, awareness, and inner strength. To remain silent means resisting the urge to explain yourself to everyone, to justify your choices, or to enter arguments that lead nowhere. This discipline is not about suppression, but about choosing where your energy truly belongs. In Buddhist practice, monks cultivate silence not because they lack thoughts, but because they value presence more than expression. Through silence, they train self-control and develop the ability to remain centered even when emotions arise. Silence becomes a form of inner training, sharpening the mind rather than dulling it. Every unnecessary word disperses energy. Every pointless debate pulls attention outward. When you practice silence, you conserve emotional strength and allow awareness to deepen. You begin to notice more not only what others say, but what they mean, and even what remains unsaid. A noisy mind reacts quickly but understands little. A quiet mind observes patiently and sees clearly. This is why silence strengthens mindfulness. When reaction fades, perception sharpens, and intuition gains space to speak. Silence also protects intuition. When the mind is constantly explaining, defending, or performing, intuition is drowned out. But when words are held back, insight arises naturally, without effort. You begin to trust inner signals instead of external noise. This does not mean ignoring others or becoming distant. It means learning discernment, knowing when speech serves wisdom and when silence carries more truth. Zen teaches that not every moment requires a response, and not every situation benefits from explanation. As you speak less, your words gain weight. As you react less, your presence grows stronger. People begin to feel your steadiness without you needing to prove anything. Silence reshapes how you show up in the world. This is the discipline of silence. It asks you to remain grounded when provoked and calm when misunderstood. Over time, you realize that silence does not weaken you, it protects you. It shields your energy, reduces unnecessary conflict, and keeps you from being drawn into emotional chaos. When silence is practiced with intention, it becomes quiet mastery. You no longer give your power away through reaction. You hold it, refine it, and allow it to guide your actions with clarity and precision. As silence becomes discipline and inner power is no longer leaked through reaction, a natural question arises. What happens when you stop fighting altogether? When you no longer resist life, but release what weighs the heart down? And from this moment of understanding, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, Letting Go, the Path Where Suffering Softens. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering does not come from pain itself, but from clinging. We hold on to outcomes, identities, expectations, and battles that were never meant to be carried for a lifetime. And the tighter we grip, the more tension we create within ourselves. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means recognizing which struggles are unnecessary and which burdens are not yours to hold. Some battles do not bring wisdom, only exhaustion. Some conflicts do not lead to clarity, only deeper entanglement. When you stop fighting what you cannot control, energy returns to you. The mind relaxes. The heart softens. You are no longer trapped in resistance, arguing with reality as it unfolds. Instead, you begin to move with life rather than against it. In Zen, suffering is closely tied to attachment. We attach our peace to people as behavior, to circumstances, to how things should be. And when reality fails to meet those expectations, suffering arises. Not because reality is cruel, but because attachment is rigid. Turning inward changes this dynamic. When you focus on your inner state rather than external conditions, suffering gradually loosens its grip. You begin to see that peace does not need permission from the outside world. It does not depend on perfect timing or ideal outcomes. Letting go is a quiet inner decision. It is choosing not to replay old arguments, not to carry resentment like a badge of honor, not to demand closure from situations that have already passed. With each release, the mind becomes lighter. This does not mean emotions disappear. Pain may still arise. Loss may still be felt. But suffering, the prolonged resistance to what is, begins to fade. You feel without drowning. You experience without clinging. When peace is no longer tied to external circumstances, stability emerges. You stop waiting for life to calm down before you allow yourself to be calm. You stop postponing peace for a future moment that may never arrive. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that freedom begins the moment we stop insisting that life must unfold according to our preferences. When attachment loosens, space opens. And in that space, healing happens naturally. Letting go is not an act of force. It is an act of trust. Trust that you do not need to control everything to be okay. Trust that inner balance is possible even when the outer world remains uncertain. As you release what binds you, suffering softens. And in that softening, peace quietly takes root. As suffering softens through letting go, a quiet transformation begins to unfold not just within you, but around you. Without announcing it, without explaining anything, your way of being starts to change how others experience you. And from this natural shift, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, When Your Presence Speaks Louder Than Words. When you stop trying to prove yourself, your presence gains weight. You no longer fill the space with unnecessary words, yet people feel you more clearly. There is a calm steadiness in how you sit, listen, and move that communicates far more than explanations ever could. You begin to notice that small provocations no longer pull you in. Remarks that once triggered reaction now pass through without leaving a mark. This is not indifference, it is inner stability. You respond when it matters and remain still when it doesn't. Zen teaches that true authority does not announce itself. It emerges naturally from balance. When your emotions are no longer easily shaken, others sense it. They may not know why, but they feel a quiet strength in your presence. Something else also shifts. You stop chasing attention. You no longer need to be seen, heard, or validated in every room. And paradoxically, this is when attention begins to move toward you. People become curious. They listen more closely. They respect the silence you carry. Silence creates a subtle form of influence. It makes space. It invites reflection. In a world addicted to noise, a calm presence stands out without effort. Your restraint communicates confidence, and confidence invites trust. This is why silence creates natural authority. Not dominance, not control, but a grounded energy that cannot be rushed or manipulated. People are less likely to provoke you, not because you resist them, but because your stillness offers no friction. Respect grows quietly in these moments. Not the respect that demands applause, but the kind that settles in and stays. Others sense that you are not driven by reaction, and that makes your presence feel safe and solid. You are no longer trying to be powerful. Power arrives through alignment. You are no longer trying to be respected. Respect emerges through consistency and calm. This is the transformation silence brings. Without words, without effort, your way of being reshapes how others relate to you. And in this quiet shift, influence becomes effortless. As your presence becomes steady and naturally respected, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. Life no longer feels like a constant battle that needs to be forced or defended. From this quiet shift, we move into the next part of the video today titled, When Alignment Replaces Struggle. It is not that the world suddenly changes around you. People are still people, circumstances are still imperfect, and uncertainty still exists. What truly changes is your inner position. You are no longer standing against life, but standing within it, grounded and clear. Silence brings clarity. When the noise fades, you start seeing what actually matters and what never did. Focus then provides direction. You stop scattering your energy and instead move with intention toward what aligns with your values and inner truth. Because of this clarity, decisions become sharper. You no longer hesitate endlessly or overthink every step. Choices arise naturally, not from fear or pressure, but from understanding. You sense what to do, and just as importantly, what to let go of. Your actions also change in quality. They become fewer but stronger. You are no longer rushing, proving, or reacting. Each movement carries weight because it comes from stillness rather than urgency. And this is where life begins to feel as if it is falling into place. Not because everything is perfect, but because your actions are no longer in conflict with your inner state. What you do and who you are start pointing in the same direction. Results begin to synchronize with effort. Opportunities appear not as miracles, but as natural outcomes of alignment. The right people resonate, the wrong paths quietly fade, and resistance loses its grip. Zen teaches that when the mind is not divided, reality responds with harmony. You stop pushing the river, and the current carries you forward. There is effort but no struggle, movement but no chaos. This is the quiet order that emerges from silence and focus. Life does not obey you, but it meets you. And in that meeting, things begin to settle into their rightful place. As inner order begins to settle and life feels less chaotic, a deeper strength quietly reveals itself. It is not loud, not forceful, and not eager to prove anything. From this inner stability, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, The Quiet Power of Non-Reaction. Reacting quickly is often mistaken for strength, but Zen teaches otherwise. True strength is not found in instant responses or emotional outbursts, but in the ability to pause. When you react automatically, you hand over control to whatever triggers you. When you don't react, you remain rooted in yourself. A person who reacts constantly lives at the mercy of others' words, moods, and behavior. One harsh comment can ruin their day. One provocation can pull them into unnecessary conflict. Their energy leaks out through every reaction, leaving them exhausted and uncentered. Non-reaction, on the other hand, seals that energy within. Silence shifts you from being controlled to being in control. Instead of being pushed and pulled by external forces, you choose your response or choose no response at all. This is not suppression, but awareness. You see the impulse to react, and you let it pass without obeying it. Zen often uses imagery to explain this. A reactive person is like dry grass, one spark, and it instantly ignites. A non-reactive person is like water, calm, grounded, and capable of extinguishing fire without effort. Water does not fight fire aggressively. It simply remains what it is. By not reacting, you preserve your inner balance. Your nervous system stays regulated, your mind remains clear, and your heart stays open without being overwhelmed. You stop wasting energy on battles that were never meant to be yours. What truly matters stays, and what doesn't quietly dissolves. Non-reaction also creates a subtle authority. People sense that they cannot easily manipulate or provoke you. Your calm becomes a boundary. Without saying much, you communicate stability, self-respect, and emotional maturity. This is not weakness. It is a disciplined inner stance. You are not avoiding life. You are meeting it from a place of steadiness. And in that steadiness, peace is no longer something you chase, it is something you embody. As the power of non-reaction settles into daily life, something even more subtle begins to form. Your calm no longer feels like a strategy, but like a natural state of being. From here, we move into the next part of the video today, titled, When Silence Becomes Presence. Silence does not make a person invisible. In fact, it sharpens presence. When you stop filling the space with unnecessary words, your energy becomes more noticeable. People feel you before they hear you, and that quiet awareness draws attention without effort. Inner stability creates trust. A calm and grounded person signals safety, clarity, and reliability to those around them. Without explaining yourself, without asserting dominance, others naturally relax in your presence. They sense that you are not reactive, not fragile, and not easily shaken. True influence does not need to be chased. When you are centered within yourself, influence arises on its own. People listen more closely, not because you speak louder, but because your words come from stillness. Silence gives weight to what is eventually spoken. Zen teaches that authority is not something you perform. It is something that emanates. Loud words may command attention for a moment, but steady inner energy creates lasting respect. The quieter the mind, the stronger the field around it. This is why silence carries a natural power. It is not passive and it is not empty. It is filled with awareness, presence, and restraint. That restraint signals confidence, the kind that does not need validation. When you focus on yourself and remain silent, you stop leaking energy outward. Your attention returns home. Over time, this creates a subtle magnetism. People feel drawn not to your personality, but to your steadiness. You no longer try to impress or influence. You simply are. And in that state of being, presence becomes unmistakable. Silence stops being an absence of sound and becomes a form of quiet authority. True power is not found in how quickly you react, but in how deeply you can remain still. In a world that constantly provokes, pulls, and demands responses, the one who does not rush to react becomes unshakable. Silence is not weakness. It is the moment where wisdom steps forward and chaos loses its grip. When you choose silence and focus on yourself, something profound begins to happen. You stop leaking energy into battles that were never meant to be yours. You stop explaining your worth, defending your choices, or proving your strength. Instead, you root yourself so deeply within that no external storm can uproot you. This is where inner stability is born. Life does not need to be forced. It does not need to be argued with or conquered. Just as rivers follow their course and seasons change without resistance, alignment unfolds when you stop pushing and start listening. Silence brings clarity. Focus brings direction. Together, they allow life to settle into its natural order. When you walk this path of stillness, you no longer chase peace. Peace recognizes you. You no longer struggle to control outcomes. Outcomes align naturally. The more you trust your inner rhythm, the less the outside world can disturb you. Everything begins to fall into place, not because life bends to your will, but because you are no longer fighting against its flow. So take a moment. Ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you reacting instead of responding? Where are you giving away your power through unnecessary words, emotions, or explanations? Awareness of this question is already the first step toward freedom. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to share one word in the comments that describes what silence means to you right now. Is it peace, strength, healing, or clarity? Your reflection may help someone else who is walking this same path. In the videos ahead, we will explore how silence reshapes relationships, how non-reaction transforms emotional pain, and how focusing inward leads to a life of deep alignment and quiet confidence. Stay with us on this journey not to escape the world, but to meet it from a place of unshackable calm. Until then, remember this. Focus on yourself, remain silent, and allow everything else to fall gently into place.